Welcome to part 2 of the terrarium video series that I'm currently filming. I've already spoken about the vessel itself and how to choose between an open or a closed terrarium and the differences between each. Today I'm going to be talking about the actual bottom layer, the first layer that you're going to put in when you make your terrarium. Now this is known as a false bottom, and it's usually made from gravel, grit or sand. Most commonly, if you're talking about an open terrarium, it will be made with sand because that's what cacti and succulents would normally grow in and that's what they like the best. If you're talking about a closed terrarium, this is usually made from a grit or a gravel, and I'm going to talk through the different types which work well inside the terrarium. Now you can see here in this terrarium there's a layer of gravel that just goes along the bottom, and that is what the false bottom is. It's a layer on the it's the first thing you put in when you make a terrarium, and it's usually around an inch or so thick. Obviously if you've got a huge vessel you're going to want to make it a little bit thicker. If you've got a tiny vessel you'll make it a little bit slimmer, but generally it's around an inch thick depending on the exact size of your vessel. But an inch gives enough room for any water to drain away, which is the reason why we put the gravel in the bottom, and it's why it's called a false bottom. All plants need drainage. That's what they thrive off. If they sit in water they hate it. Obviously again there are exceptions to the rules. For example, carnivorous plants love to sit in water. However, with the exception of those, most plants really need to be away from water, sat in their roots, because it will cause root rot, which upsets them and eventually it will kill the plant. So it's important that we create this layer in the bottom of the terrarium called a false bottom from gravel, where any extra water that it has gathered in the terrarium can drain away from the roots of the plant, keeping them nice and healthy. So let's talk about the different types of gravel that you could put in the bottom of your terrarium. There's a few different options, but I'm going to talk about the 3 most popular and my 3 most favourite. Number 1 is the classic pea shingle, or gravel that you would find on your driveway. It's literally size of a pea. It can come in all different colours. It's really easy to get hold of. It's very cheap to get hold of. You can buy it at most DIY stores, B&Q and so on. You can buy it obviously at garden centres. You can get it online. It is the cheapest and most easily accessible option for putting in the bottom of your terrarium. Now you'll notice, because the pieces are quite bigger, soil is able to fall between the gaps. I have got a little trick to stop that happening, which I'm going to show you in the next video, but just bear that in mind when you're using this kind of gravel. So that's option 1, a simple pea shingle. Option number 2 is my favourite, and this is what's called an Alpine Grit. Again, you can get it from most garden centres. It is a little bit trickier to find, but you can find it online. It's a really fine version of shingle, and again it comes in lots of different colours. I've chosen this light grey version here that's actually got a few little pink specks in it as well, which I really like. Because it is so fine, soil finds it hard to seep through the gaps, so therefore it works really well in a terrarium environment, and it looks really smart as well. So that's option 2, is a nice Alpine Grit. Option number 3 is a coral sand. Now don't worry, this isn't shipped over from the actual coral reefs around the world or anything like that. It's grown in a farmed environment in the UK, so don't worry about its environmental impact because it's not actually from wild coral. However, this is the most beautiful option to put in the bottom of your terrarium. It's so fine, it's so white, and it just looks lovely in the bottom of terrariums, but it is the most expensive option out there. So bear that in mind if you're thinking of adding this to your terrarium. But if you're just making one terrarium, and if you're buying a bag of this, then it probably won't matter so much. And you can probably splash the cash a little bit if you're just doing one really nice terrarium. This is available from nearly all aquariums or aquarium shops online. Like I said, it's called coral sand, fairly easy to find, and yeah, comes in lots of different colours, but it is a bit pricey. So those are the 3 main options that you can get: a cheaper, normal gravel that you would find on your driveway, known as a pea shingle, an Alpine Grit that you can get from most garden centres, which is usually used on rockeries in people's gardens or on the top of potted plants. And then you've got the expensive, slightly luxury version of the coral sand, which is available from most aquarium shops. There are obviously lots of other options that you could choose and you can find online or in garden centres and other shops, but those are my 3 favourite and the 3 which are the most common to find. All of those gravels are great for closed terrariums. If you are making an open terrarium, you may want to use some sand. And again, this is available online, and it's just a normal fine craft or aquarium sand. The other option you can get is a coloured version. If you want to go crazy and make it really pretty, that's fine. And again, when I make an open terrarium in a later tutorial, I'll show you how to use these guys properly, but this is the type of thing that you're going to want to use when you make an open terrarium. Now, depending on the shape of your vessel, you're also going to need a few tools to be able to put the gravel or the sand into the bottom of the terrarium. If you're doing a closed terrarium, particularly if you're doing a demijohn terrarium, you're going to need a funnel. It's the only way to get the gravel into the glass itself without it taking absolutely ages. Now, these will just sit in the top of the glass and you can pop your gravel in and slowly push it through. Usually if you use a long stick or a knitting needle to help it go through, it'll go through quicker, and that will eventually fill the bottom of the terrarium. So this is a handy tool to have, particularly if you've got a vessel with a narrow neck. If you've got a vessel like this one I had earlier, the example, I can fit my hand in here, so it's no problem. You can just hand scoop the gravel in. And if you're doing an open terrarium with sand, having a spoon, like a long spoon to slowly put it in, is really, really useful. When I do the tutorial, I'll talk you through all these stages in more detail. But for now, I'm just talking about the actual ingredients, if you like, or the individual elements that you need to get your terrarium ready to go. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the next layer, which is soil. See you then.